Hello, Brian Hogg here, and I want to do a first look at this Twist app, which I just got the beta invite for, so I can create an account, and I'm just doing that now. But the promise of this is to try and sort out a lot of the issues with Slack, namely the fact that it's really hard to kind of follow a discussion along and see what these... I know Slack has threads now, but the UI for that is pretty horrendous. They're in this like separate area, and a lot of people don't use it properly and whatnot. And then you still lose some context as to when that thread started and all that stuff. But for example, you can't really see, okay, this person replied to this person, but in between that and that message and then the original one, there's been some things I have to scroll way up to try and figure that out and everything else. Plus the distraction element of having all these Slack teams and all these dots, which are kind of addictive, like, ooh, what's in the dot? You kind of want to click it and see what's there. And obviously being now part of a whole ton of Slack channels, it again becomes a lot to try and keep up on. So it's supposed to alleviate this somehow, so I figured I would give it a shot and see how it goes. So all I've done so far is I've invited someone else. Not sure if they've accepted that invite. I might invite myself with a separate email just to be able to demo kind of more than one person using it at a time. I've been asked to what channels I want to start or join, which sounds a lot like the Slack channels. So I'm not sure how those are different. And you can see here the collaborate with threads. So keeping discussions one place and no more context switching. But again, those threads are right now similar to what's in Slack. So I'm not 100% sure how it's different, but let's see. So I am in the general channel. So it looks like, okay. So I see welcome your teammates below, starting today, etc., etc. So skip for now, or I can post in this thread. So it looks like everything is super geared toward threads. Like you can't actually just chat in a channel. A channel is actually just an email inbox essentially. So if I add a test comment or something, so maybe something about the content that's in this post, everyone on the channel will still be able to see your comment. So that's weird. So everyone in the channel will still be able to see your comment, but no one will be notified about it. So I never got any options on notifications. I'm not 100% sure what's happening here. So edit recipients. That doesn't give me anything. And that's probably actually because I'm the only one on the team, I bet. So it's weird that came up, but I can still say post anyway, so you can see how the thread would work. And yeah, very similar to a email kind of system, but it's all amalgamated to one spot. So if I had another channel, I could do that, but otherwise I would just have a bunch of threads here. I don't know, maybe discuss upcoming project, what's on your mind, the next project, something like this. So now I'm posting the thread, and as you can see that, so now that is a separate thread, similar to what most email clients would now have, where replies to messages are coming up and they would show in a thread and you'd be able to review it there. But the beauty of having this is that you don't have you're not using your own inbox, and it gets cluttered with not only work related threads and specific threads discussing specific topics, but this will have everything separate from your inbox, but still in a way that you can kind of browse easily. And I'm assuming, yep, there's obviously a way to view this, and you can search for it. So assuming the search works well and you kind of describe things with certain keywords, then the chances of you actually finding that pretty quickly are high. So now we can actually have then messages, which look like they'd be toward one person. Okay, yep, so these would just be messages back and forth, but with a similar UI. So you would pick a person and then it would create a thread similar to this and do it that way. So it's kind of interesting. So everyone would just hop into a thread. Everything's threaded. I mean, it's similar to, the P2 theme from WordPress, which is a free kind of theme that you can have in there. and I haven't used it in a long time, so I'm not sure how much it's different. And they moved from P2 to Slack. A lot of people, or the company, one of the companies behind WordPress, you would say, has used P2 in the past and are able to use that to have threaded conversations. You can see in the background here, threaded conversations, and you have an update, and you'd view that. So I do wonder how these updates would come in. So maybe if I say invite another email of myself. Okay, let me just accept that and open another browser for it. Okay, so now I've just joined on a separate email, and again I'm asked to join see which channel I want to join, or I can create a new one. And then explore thread, so to keep everything in one place, easy feedback, and no more context switching. So assuming that the team uses it where you start a new thread for each new discussion, and you kind of end a discussion, and it doesn't go on tangents, which never happens. You'd really have to have some kind of process, I think, to know when you would start a new thread. But yeah, as long as the subject of a thread is relatively specific, or not, I guess, you could have a thread that is around a certain topic, so at least all conversations in that thread are around a certain topic, then you'd just be able to do that. So no more context switching, continue. And here we are. So we could enable that notification. So I'm just going to test C, perhaps wait until V2. Oh, so interesting. So I can't hit enter to post. That'll get annoying. Maybe command enter. Yep. So command enter will quickly allow you to add that in. And if I come back here and go into threads, we can see that we get a notification on that thread, and there it is. So you're still going to have to keep up. If you've got multiple teams that are using this and you have multiple threads that are kind of active at any given moment, you're still going to have to go in. You're still going to have to check each one of those threads, and then you're going to have to go in and, either clear the notification for that thread or perhaps start a new thread. And it still feels similar to, now it's just added another layer on top of channels. So you've got this channel, and then you can add another one there, but then within it, all you have are threads. So at least hopefully you don't have just, a conversation that is, has 50 different things within it that aren't threaded, and you got to scroll through all those things. You still need to go in and catch up, but at least you're able to see everything in a threaded form, again, as long as people use the threads properly. I was curious if there was some way of muting a thread. So maybe I could, let's see, edit, delete, move thread. Okay, so I can move the thread to another channel, maybe an archive channel, so that could be good. But that's as an admin, but I don't see any way to mute a thread. So you're okay, I want to go in and check it every once in a while, but I don't really care how long, or, I don't want to be notified of any messages within that thread, maybe just because it just doesn't apply to me as much. So threads attached to me. So there might be some way of removing that notification and removing myself from a thread, but I'm not seeing that right now. You can add a task to Todoist. So it's the same company that made Todoist. So it has that integration there. And you can copy the thread link from there. So I'm not really seeing an easy way of kind of removing myself from a thread. Maybe I can do that because I didn't start this thread as Joe. So I wonder if there's some way of removing myself from this thread. You can notify, add to Todoist, maybe notify, notification settings. Yeah, so I'm not seeing a way to remove myself from this thread now, and almost essentially instead of leaving a channel, I'm leaving this thread. So I'm just not notified anymore, but it's still there. I did see a little alert there, but it kind of went away, so that's odd. So again, I could create the channel and do that, but I still see a lot of the issues with if you basically use channels as threads, I don't see this as being very different than Slack at this point. Unless I'm missing something about how it needs to be used. Essentially, if you created a new channel to discuss a certain topic, which the UI isn't really geared to that, so I get it. It's a lot easier to start a thread here than it is to create a new channel. But you're essentially, if you got a bunch of threads, you're going to have to, just like channels in Slack, you're going to have to check each one, see what the message is, go into it, read, catch up on it, reply to it. So it's a very similar process, it feels, than Slack, just with a focus around threads. And it does have these direct messages, which are, again, very similar to what you would see in Slack. So that's the initial look. I'm sure the apps, it looks like there's an app for iPhone and maybe there's one for iOS and Apple itself specifically, I'm sure have a very similar UI to this. And that integration to Todoist, if that's what your team happens to use for your project management, could be nice to take a thread and add it into Todoist and have all that back story, and you don't have to copy it in. But apart from that, it just really does feel like Slack, just with a layer of and focus around threads. So that's the initial view of Todoist, and we'll see how they do when they do their public launch.